Man, Andrew, that episode was awesome. We really started going down a rabbit hole at the end. I feel like we could have turned that into like a 2 hour podcast, no problem. Um, and it was different than our traditional podcast because, our guest, Elise Micheals, she is a men's coach. So she focuses on um, helping us men level up. And a lot of times that comes in our relationships more so than our businesses because a lot of people are successful on the business side, not so much the relationships. So it was pretty eye opening, and a lot of stuff she said I resonated with. Um, and I think you did as well.
Bro, honestly, it's crazy. We get so caught up in personal development and setting goals and having I personally for me anyway, high expectations for myself and what I want to do, but like to have it's right, it's a different conversation. Like applying all that to relationships, like I guess I haven't really done on that level of awareness and consciously the way she's talking about and the kind of the things she's bringing up. We almost have to have her on again, man. It's like it brings up more questions to ask than even answers that I got. But I loved it. I thought it was incredible. I think this is going to be a great episode for everybody that listens to this podcast.
Yeah, one hundred
It's going to be
percent.
something
And
unique, something that you may not consider is something you need to hear, but absolutely 1,000% something to check out.
yeah, and I definitely think we will have a second episode at some point. So yeah, hopefully everyone enjoys it. I think they will.
Welcome to the Alchemist Nation podcast. We are a community of business and real estate professionals who are on a shared mission to help every individual achieve financial freedom through right action, the right knowledge, and the right accountability. Join me, Andrew McMurray, and my co-host Mitch Jaworski as we find and interview those who have mastered wealth and who have a desire to share their wisdom with you. Enjoy!
Welcome to another episode of the Alchemist Nation podcast. I am your host, Mitch Jaworski. I'm here with my co-host, Andrew McMurray, and we're on a streak because we have yet another female guest. We're starting to really balance the powers here, and it's pretty awesome. Andrew, how you doing? Tell us about our guest for this episode.
What's going on, Mitch? I am doing outstanding. Thank you for asking. It's good to see you yet another week. And today we have a special guest, Elise Micheals. So Elise, just like all the rest of us, what started as a personal journey of growth and development and going through personal struggle has now led to a business of empowering others, especially men, who are ready to navigate through their emotional mazes and emerge on the other side with a renewed sense of purpose. And so her expertise at this point is really helping men to dive deep and identify the roots of their anxiety, their workaholism, and be able to set actionable goals that can foster genuine healing and growth. And so she has been working closely recently with Alchemist Nation, and she'll be speaking at the summit. So we're looking forward to getting to know you better, Elise. Thank you for coming. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. Um, love being part of this.
That's awesome. Based on Andrew's intro, I already know that I'm basically going to steal this podcast and just get like a free coaching right now. That's what's it's going to turn into that. Like, fair warning.
All right, I'm ready. Reveal all your traumas.
Exactly.
I don't know if
All
we
the
have enough
traumas
time.
shall be healed. But so speaking of essentially, helping people and kind of coaching them up, um, I'm curious, and I'm sure others are like, I guess why is it fire you up? And like I guess, that's probably how you got here. So I'd love to hear anything you want to share in regards to just either how you got into it or more so like what keeps that fire burning to do what you do.
Yeah, so being a men's mental health coach, I've been doing it for about 4 years now, and I didn't want to initially be a men's coach. I was trying to be a women's coach, but men were the ones who were asking me for help. And once I found out how little support and tools that there were for men and how men learn how people address men's issues, that's when I decided to be that person. And once I dove into it, I just kind of fell in love with it. And I've been doing it ever since. So that's what keeps me fired up, is being able to help men with their own mental health when there's not a lot of resources for them.
So, as a man, usually we'll go to like men for help slash coaching or whatever. But I think with that, you miss an element, you miss a perspective that a woman can give you. So there's a void you were filling.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And obviously, there's some voids that I don't fill by not being a man. But I think that there's a really good balance when a lot of men's issues are around relationships or understanding women and how we think. So being able to translate that into how men think, it has been really helpful for them for the most part, from what I hear.
You said that you noticed that men don't have access to maybe the same tools that you noticed women had access to or that you were used to having as a woman. Are there like a glaring one or two? Like what are some obvious tools that we can immediately access that you apparently did have access to as a woman?
Yeah, I mean, women are encouraged to be able to express their emotions, to talk about things, to collaborate with each other, whereas men are not. Men are encouraged to compete, they're encouraged to contain their emotions, their mental well being. So, just being able to learn how to self regulate, control our emotions, be able to express, be able to be vulnerable with other people and other men, those are just off the top of my head some resources that I've kind of helped men work through so that they can have a different experience than they're used to.
And what do you mean by self-regulate, if that is a simple answer?
Yeah, self-regulation is the act of a kind of observing the self and regulating your nervous system. So we all think things logically, and you think, I'm sad, I'm happy, I'm angry, but the body has its own response system as well that a lot of people don't pay attention to and they don't understand. So often our body is responding to the environment and we're trying to fix it logically. But a lot of men aren't encouraged to talk about things, so they don't understand what's going on in their mind or their body. So self-regulation is understanding both and being able to bring ourselves back to a calm and centered space using actionable tools and resources. AKA, you don't fly off the handle, you don't feel overwhelmed, and you don't completely shut down when things get hard or chaotic.
That's interesting because recently, I have a like real estate investing friend who used to be a therapist in a former life, and she talked about using the body to essentially change your state or to self-regulate, and it kind of blew my mind. And I was like, huh, that is an interesting tool. So it sounds like you're kind of alluding to that as well as a practice.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, it's the foundational way to heal trauma because trauma is stored in the body. And if you think about mindset and energy and cells and Dr. Joe Dispenza and how he talks about
Joe
quantum leaping
D.
and all that. Yeah, I mean, so everything is down to the energy in your cells. And what deals with the energy in your cells is your physiology. So you have to change your physiology. You start by doing it in the mind, but someone says, oh, I'm so angry, I'm so depressed. It's not just that easy to say, oh, I'm happy. It's not just that easy to say, I feel good right now, because your body is probably stuck in a certain position. Like you've kept it with this position that holds memories. And that's responding to your brain, telling it how to feel, telling it how to respond. So you change the body's response, it's even easier to change the mind's response.
Makes a lot of sense.
So that's the first thing I always suggest to all of my clients is we're going to start by having you understand your own physiology so that we can change your mindset.
Now I know why Tony Robbins says everyone get up and do the Superman pose.
100%.
Change their state.
I feel like my body's naturally wanting to sit up as you're talking about it. I wonder if you're doing some sort of hypnosis or neurolinguistic programming on it.
You just starting to feel more aware. The more aware you can be of where you're at, the more control you have.
That makes sense. That really does. And it's so simple. I have a quick question. I'd like to go back to the competition. You mentioned competition briefly. There's a time and place for competition though, right? As an energy to express itself. And what does like healthy competition look like to you?
Yeah, there's definitely time for healthy competition between women, between men. Unhealthy competition, I would say, is when it becomes self-destructive, right? Anytime something becomes self-destructive is when it's no longer healthy. And that means you're competing against people who are on your team. So instead of kind of building something, you become the person who's destroying it. being so competitive that you refuse to allow anybody to help you. You refuse to allow yourself to receive anything. So you completely isolate yourself thinking that you have to compete against everyone, and you don't get very far when you go alone.
Interesting. So it's the community itself. It's like having understanding and like leaning on your team and your tribe more or less, while also being in competition, I guess, in the world at large.
Right.
Interesting.
And the competition against yourself is how much better can I be today? How much more can I do today? If you become lazy on yourself and stop competing with yourself, you will fall into depression because you will no longer be fulfilling anything. You'll no longer be achieving anything. And the quickest route to happiness is being proud of accomplishments that you've done. Not just doing accomplishments, but being proud of accomplishments you've done. And the only way you can be proud of something you've done is if you've done something challenging. Because we feel good if we overcome resistance. We don't feel good if we keep doing things we're already good at, for the most part.
Yeah, because you kind of just like feel content at best or whatever. And you kind of even
Right.
lose that feeling.
Right.
And I mean, and it's such a simple point, but such a powerful one where you kind of basically, so there's a quote from the rapper J. Cole where he says, I used to think it was me against the world, and then I realized it's just me against me. And that's something that resonated with me years ago when I saw it, because I'm like, that's really true. Like, and I look at, who I am today compared to who I was 5 years ago and who I, will be 5 years from now. And it's just like, I expect continued growth. And like, I think, a better man now than I was 10 years ago, and so on and so forth. And I think that's part of, like you said, just we are competing in a way with ourselves. When you get into trouble is when you start playing the comparison game with other people as opposed to with yourself.
And I think you do need to use other people at a certain point in time as a benchmark. I don't think that's unhealthy either. It's just unhealthy when it becomes self-destructive, like we said. Like, if it starts to block your ability to actually trust people or do things, then you're in the wrong. But I don't think it's wrong to actually look at other people and say, I want to beat that benchmark. Because if they're so far ahead of you, like you need a healthy target.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's like, to me, that's goal setting. Like my goal is X, and it's like, well, here's an example of that goal. So, and that's where you can A, mimic, B, seek advice or counsel from that person or any of those things, and that's the benefits of like finding mentors, so to speak. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. I also like that based on what you touched on, there is that kind of like abundance versus, scarcity mindset. And it's like, we talk about that, I feel like, a lot in the community too, where it's like there's competition from like an abundant place, and then there's that competition where it's like, scarcity, where it's just like, all right, it's a net zero, so it's like, in order for me to win, that person needs to lose, as opposed to the pie's big enough for everybody, or grow the pie. I don't know. Is that something you like run into? Because again, like you said, with men, there's a lot of competition. So with your clients, do you like run into that mindset at all, where you like, in terms of like the competitive outlet being more so from a scarcity place rather than an abundance, or is it something that you don't really see?
I think my clients more face scarcity when it comes to relationship and what they feel they deserve about them with themselves, and not as a conscious thought of like, I don't deserve this, because my clients tend to be very self-sufficient. They usually get what they want, but there's usually little pieces missing, and it's usually caused from childhood, from them being rejected at certain times, or being dismissed, being ignored. And a lot of people who are incredibly successful, usually it stems from those deep wounds from scarcity of not having enough love, not having enough wealth, not having abundance. So of course, many people who are wealthy or very successful in certain areas suffer from a scarcity mentality, because they're fighting to get every last drop that they can because they didn't have enough.
Yep. Not that I know anything about that.
Do you have a personal story you want to share?
Preaching to the choir right now. No, not really. But I mean, anyone knows me kind of knows that that's about right. So yeah, no, what you're saying is real, because, I feel like I've experienced that in my life due to, whatever childhood experiences and what I've carried into adulthood. And I think it's not uncommon for a lot of, I'm not even gonna say men, a lot of people So that alone is a endeavor worth trying to help people with or helping people with. Like just that one specific thing you just talked about, like that can be game changing for people. And, you know, men and again, I think people in general see that in their lives where you have all the success in many areas and then you're struggling with whatever it is. And, you know, I think especially with men, given the way we are programmed when it comes to relationships, like we feel like maybe, you know, especially if you have any kind of like feelings of like if you're confident and you're successful, you feel like when it comes to relationships, you deserve a certain type of woman. And that looks like many things. And it's like if let's just say it's like four things, right? It's four big things, and you have three out of the four. I think men like those type of men struggle with that. Like in the example you were talking about, you know, and it's like, well, shit, I'm failing because I only have three out of the four.
Right. And I think society has not done a good job of helping men assess what they actually need to prepare to be in a relationship. It shows them all the materialistic standards that they need to live up to, but none of the actual relationship characteristics that keep a relationship together. And statistically, women are the ones who file for divorce. I think it's like 70% or 90% of the time. And, you know, I'm a men's mental health coach. So a lot of the content that I see is based around polarity. A lot of men hating women, a lot of women hating men. And so a lot of men will say women are the ones who are ruining marriages. 90% of them file for divorce. But you have to look at like women will put in relationship effort, whether they are with someone they are incredibly in love with or not. But statistically, men will only put in the effort to learn these skill sets if they're incredibly in love. So we have to kind of like really look from both sides. That's why my content really focuses on teaching the skill sets that are actually important to keep things together or to understand about yourself, to have a smooth life, instead of focusing on what society deems as important, because most of the time women don't care about a lot of that stuff.
This is true. Like I agree with that just because I know like for a fact, you'll see more often where a woman will fall in love with a man because of who he is. Like I know so many stories of like, you know, married couples that it's just like the woman was like, I wasn't into him at all. I didn't find him attractive, but then they fall in love with the person that he is. And you see that much, 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 much less when it comes to men. And even when it happens, I feel like the men still kind of like, oh, I love my wife, but like, in terms of like, you know, they're struggling with that. Oh, you know, just wanting to like, whatever, be more attracted to her or whatever it is. And that's interesting. I think that's one of the big clear differences I see in terms of the way women and men kind of fall in love.
Right. Well, men usually use attraction as their number one factor. There are so many times I ask a man why he's gotten married, and he says, you know, she was really pretty. That's always like one of the number one, which isn't a bad thing. Like we have to be attracted to our partner for sure. But men, the thing is like women will use personality and it kind of can umbrella all the other things. Like if his personality is amazing and he treats her really well and he takes care of things like, you know, just really treasures her, that will kind of overshadow looks at times, as long as she doesn't find him hideous, right? She needs to be attracted in some way. But for men, he will overlook everything else if she's really hot. So she could be a terrible person. Men will do this to themselves. I mean, agree or disagree? Maybe I'm wrong.
No, 100%. I'm just like ready to, I'm like, Andrew, do we have the hot, crazy scale we can bring up on screen?
Like that's the thing though. And so, you know, is it like, because men will get with women, even wealthy men will get with women who are emotionally unstable, using them, not good, and they end up in these horrible situations because they're not assessing with the right characteristics and values. And women don't assess with the right characteristics and values either. But that's our problem. We really look at the wrong things when we get in relationships.
100%. Yeah. And it's funny because I mean, like I said, I feel like I'm turning this into my own therapy session. I luckily maybe have always been on the other side of that fence where like most of my long-term relationships have been with women that I wasn't like, I was like friends with at first or whatever. And then like, as I got to know them, and it's just like, they were like so awesome. And we had such good intellectual conversation and enjoyed being with them. And like all the other things that are important were there. And it was just like I ended up getting into that relationship, and it's just like, but the fact that that attraction was missing also a lot of times I think ended up being I don't want to say a linchpin, but a problem. So like I had that with an ex-girlfriend, and it was just like I was never really into her like that from the jump, but we dated for a couple years, and eventually I think I let any of the other problems become bigger because deep down I probably felt like I was missing that spark or whatever because like there wasn't that attraction.
Yeah, you have to
But
be attracted to them. And statistically, in order for marriages to work, and I just saw this video today. That's why I'm spitting all these facts out. I
love
can
it.
send the video if anybody wants to prove me wrong. I can send you the video. But
Put it in the show notes.
the woman said that there are two types of marriages that can work. One where they equally love each other, or one where the man loves the woman more than she loves him. But the one where the woman loves the man more usually tends not to work out. So, and I feel like a lot of people listening to this are going to feel like this is true, because it just doesn't work out. Like, because men, they will just not put in the effort if they do not feel the urge to reproduce or take that person to the grave. But women will put in effort for everything as far as emotions go. Like that's our forte, right? Women are emotional creatures. We're very empathic, all of those things. But men are action takers. So in your subconscious mind, if it's not going anywhere, why would you put any effort in? Women try to create your instinct to do that for them by emotionally nurturing you or supporting you. But if it's not that for you, then it just doesn't matter. I hope this resonates. Is this resonating? Or am I way off base?
It is. I mean, you have no idea. I can't. I don't want to spill out my whole personal life. You have no idea how much this resonates. Like, little do you know, I am your client avatar.
Well, now I guess you know more personally how good I am at what I do.
There you go. So, you know, speaking of what you do, let's shift gears and talk about. So, obviously, we're talking about the relationship aspect, right, in regards to men, their relationships, which is super important because it's hard to be successful. You can be, but obviously, it's not as easy to be successful when you're miserable in your personal relationships. But when it comes to your coaching, I'm assuming, and there's a ripple effect, obviously, you know, just from helping people with their personal stuff. But is there a focus on their professional endeavors, or is it kind of just a case by case, you know, thing? Like, how does that work?
So the men that I work with, for the most part, like I said, they're very self-sufficient and hyper independent, which means they're usually very successful at business. So the main problems that I find with the clients that I work with are when they do not carve out white space for themselves. So their calendars are a mess. They're constantly stressed, no time for themselves. Their work runs into their personal life. They can't stop thinking about work. They can't stop thinking in general. They tend to have anxiety, ADHD-like symptoms, going here, going there, never can sit down, never can relax. They often feel like they have to be doing something. They usually can't go to sleep at night. Maybe they have to have a drink after work. Maybe they have to take a Xanax to go to bed. Maybe they wake up in the middle of the night because their mind is racing. So then they're a little bit anxious. Their partners struggle because of this, because they're not present. Their kids struggle because they're not really present. So they often have kind of like this guilt, and they think that what they need to work on is time management. But going below that, it's, you know, it's self-regulation. It's understanding that you can take time for yourself and it won't take away from your productivity. So is that resonating at all?
It's all true. I mean, so like, Andrew, I'm wondering what's going through your mind because obviously, you know, I got a few years on you. We're in very different stages in our lives. So, I mean, what she's saying, you know, for me, like as a professional in his 40s, like, you know, and just hasn't been married, right? A lot of this stuff is just like, I'm just nodding. So I'm like, yep. Like I've experienced that. I know what you're talking about, blah, blah, blah. So you're in a very different place than I
But
am.
hang on, let me do a second half.
Ooh,
Because I already know
it.
where you're going with this, because I was actually going to say something, but I forgot. There's two types of men. The man that I just described, who's already in it, who already has his trajectory, who's already been on the path. And then the man before that, who hasn't really started his career yet, he's usually stuck on purpose and passion and mission. He's floating around, feeling a little bit lost, kind of doesn't really know where to start, doesn't have consistency, doesn't have his foot set in the ground. maybe is a self-learner, but jumps from thing to thing to thing. So has trouble starting and stopping projects, is constantly kind of looking for the next thing to be the thing. So that's kind of what we help clear up then is getting him to a level of self-discovery where he feels confident in his next moves to go after and get the things that he wants. So that was another half.
Interesting. Yeah.
Now,
So
Andrew, I would love to know your spot.
oh, it's cool. Yeah, no, I like that because it shows me that I've like shifted, like I've recently shifted because that was definitely me the last few years, just fully like, okay, I released like a bunch of shit that wasn't really me. So what am I? What do I want to be? And like what am I here to do before I head out? And so then as you were going through, what your client now is facing, I feel maybe I'm not like I beat myself up. I'm not as successful as I want to be, but all the stressors and all the things you're talking about, I'm like, damn, that's what my life has seemed to become recently. Like that's exactly where I feel I'm at. And then you said the biggest problem you identify is time management. I'm like 100%. Like that's totally what I'm addressing right now. But so at least I'm excited to know that I've shifted a bit. So that's
Yeah,
cool.
and you'll go, and this is the thing. It's not that you've like shifted and now everything is like better, like you were a loser before or stupid or
New
anything like that.
problems. New
The
problems.
shifts happen constantly because you'll have your footing, you'll be successful for a time, and then you'll stop having the accountability or self-reflection, right? Because you'll have overcome a lot of obstacles when achieving that goal, and you'll plateau again. And then once again, you'll be in the part of purpose and mission and passion, and you'll be stuck there for a little while, and then you'll go again. So it's like it's not a this or that, like one half of your life the other. It's a pattern that men are going to find themselves in kind of like constantly. So the more conscious and aware you can become, the more you can easier navigate those limbo times. Because what I find is men feeling stuck, like they're on a hamster wheel in these limbo times, feeling like I just can't get out of this, I'm so sick of this, feeling like they're like crazy, or they've lost something special in themselves, when really it's just turning it into a positive. Like, this is the transition in your life to the next greatest part of yourself. What do we need to let go of? What do we need to move to? And it becomes easier and easier every time.
That makes sense. That makes sense. It's like I always see it as like a piano, right? You got like the eight notes or whatever, and then it goes back to the same one, but it's at a new octave now. It's not quite a loop. You're spiraling upwards a little bit.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's awesome. Okay. Cool. So we're great. Then it's just about being present then and self-regulating at that point and just enjoying whatever the moment has, right? I guess.
Yes. And then you also have to have, I think, inspired action and someone who can push you to view your potential. Because of my personal opinion, we cannot view our own potential because you can't solve what you can't see. And humans are naturally like set to be lazy. So if you don't have someone there kind of pushing you, then you won't go as far as you can. So you'll have your own big goals, but have somebody there to kind of keep checking you throughout your life. Continue to get new mentors, continue to have new inspirations.
100%. I 100% agree with that because I mean, we see it. I mean, just in Alchemist Nation, we see it, and I personally see it. I mean, that's one of the best parts of my friendship with Walter is that like he sees more for me than I see, and kind of like, just by us being friends, we kind of push each other, you know. And I think one of the things when it comes to like you see like all these different coaching programs and whatnot, but at the end of the day, like if you can just get good accountability from a group, that alone is a benefit, right? Even if you're not getting anything else, because we can try and hold ourselves accountable as much as we want. It's just not the same.
Right. Right. They say if you have someone who's like ahead of you in life and you're just in the same room with them, you will do 15% better just by association. So you have to
Yeah.
be constantly. I don't understand people who resist going to things like conferences and summits and hiring coaches and, oh, I can just read this from a book or I can just watch this on a YouTube video. Like, not every coach in the world is a good coach, and not every event is worth going to. This is so true. And I think you should do your research. But to say that you can get everything by yourself is just totally false. I mean, you got to get in the room with other big thinkers, even if it's just to be in their presence, because they're doing things that you're not doing.
Absolutely. And yet again, I've experienced that myself because I was such a lone wolf, overly independent because of the way I grew up. And it was just like me against the world. And then I didn't start networking and going to events and just generally like the advantage of just other people kind of like collaboration, right? I didn't do any of that until I was like 34, 35. I finally started doing it. And I was like, I was amazed at the way like just opportunity exploded once I started doing that. And it didn't happen like day one. Like it was like a year or two into me going to networking meetups, especially even just locally. And then it got to the point where it's just like, whatever opportunities to pop up because people think of you because they associate you with a certain thing. It's like, oh, I know Mitch invests, in so-and-so town doing so-and-so. I have a deal. Sweet. Let me call him, little things like that even. And, it's always like, Andrew, what is it that we say? It's you go, you can go fast alone, but you can't go far or something like that.
Yeah, you can go faster alone, you can go
Yeah.
farther.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
totally,
It's like
totally
if you
makes
want to go
sense.
fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Yeah.
And it's funny because like there's so many of these like mantras and whatnot that kind of just seem like silly, but they're really true. Like also, you are the average of the five people you spend the most time with. I so believe in that one. And I look at like the different groups of friends I've had over the years, or different groups of just like business associates, and like there is a material difference. And you just mentioned it, just like being in a room with somebody, it can have that like 15, 50, 20% material impact on how well you're doing. So, yeah, seems like it's not rocket science, but we all seem to not embrace it, I guess, until I guess you become aware.
Right. I think that the answers are really simple, but the implementation is hard. Like by yourself, I believe it's hard. I think things can be much easier when you're with someone who knows what they're doing and you're actually willing to do the thing. Because a lot of people say that they're willing or they act like they're willing, but they don't show up. And
Yeah.
I don't want to like call a bunch of people out who may or may not be listening to this, because some people
Hell
like read
no,
a
we're
lot of
calling
books,
people
but just
out.
that's the thing, right? You got to be like have a little tough love sometimes.
I mean, I'm from New York originally, so I agree with that. I mean, I grew up with tough love, probably to like an unhealthy aspect.
I was going to ask you in the beginning if you're from the East Coast. I knew you weren't from
Yeah.
Boston.
No, no. So my accent's gotten tweaked from being in Florida for almost 20 years. So now people are like, are you from Boston? I'm like, do not insult me. I'm
No,
like,
I didn't hear that at all. I knew it. I was going to say New Jersey.
oh, okay. I can see that. So no offense to all my fellow Massachusetts investors, because ironically, I predominantly invest in real estate in Massachusetts. So the irony just keeps building in this moment. But no, I think tough love sometimes needs to happen because, like you said, like we're never going to push ourselves like someone else does. And like I've always looked at that. In fact, this is a great question. I'd love to get your feedback because I'm sure other men are curious. I've always looked at like if I'm in a serious relationship with a woman, I want to be in a relationship where she's also got some ambition and we, in a healthy way, push each other to be better. You know what I mean? Like, because there's times where you just need someone else to give you that nudge. So, I mean, is that like, am I crazy or is that like something that is like a positive in a relationship?
No, definitely. I definitely think that it's necessary in a relationship, but I think a lot of people partner up in an uncollaborative way. They want people to love them the way that they are, and they want people to love them in the way they want to be loved, but they don't understand that part of their ego has to die in a relationship, and part of them is going to have to adapt and is going to have to change because if someone is willing to be with you for life, there's going to be things that come up that are so challenging and you can't just say love me the way I am. Everybody's changing always. So by saying that you're resisting your potential, you're resisting change, which goes for both men and women.
I love that you just shared that because that is so true. And I think that is one of the biggest hangups is that people, that's what it is. It's like, love me for who I am. And it's just like, well, who you are is ever changing. And the reality is, I think anyone that, I don't know, I feel like has any common sense realizes that when you go into a relationship, like your life, you're choosing to fundamentally change your life because you can't live the exact same life you were living as a single person.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just not going to work unless you expect that person to 100% completely adapt to your life and change everything about their life, which is completely unfair. And I think that's the biggest hang up, especially with people that are single later into life. because you build this life for yourself. And then it's like, well, wait, hold on. I built a full life, right? Because you want to build a full life. But then it's like, wait, now I need to make room for somebody. And a lot of people struggle with that. I've seen that with like a lot of my peers that, you know, got married late. Like it was a struggle to make that transition because you feel like you're losing your identity a little bit.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. You have to recreate a new identity with someone and not feel like you're losing because of it. I think a lot of people panic because they feel like because their identity has to change, they're losing part of themselves, part of their freedom, part of what they like about life. But the person you choose should be able to give you liberty in a new way, because them helping you change to become a better person should be more liberating than just ignoring your flaws because you're by yourself.
I feel like that was a mic drop line right there.
And not in such a critical way, right? Because I don't want anybody to think that, okay, now it's good for me to go call my spouse a freaking idiot because they're not washing the dishes, or like she's too emotional, she needs to pick up her shit and stop with her baggage. Like, we don't want to use this as an excuse to emotionally abuse our partner and weaponize compassion. This is the self work. Like, a lot of actual work that happens in relationships is self work, as far as how we communicate, the tone which we communicate, how we perceive things, our own triggers, our own traumas. If you can handle those things and communicate things effectively, then you can get through mostly any situation. But people don't want to do that. They say, I'm triggered by this, so you need to change. This isn't working for me, you change. Instead of, I'm feeling quite triggered by this, I wonder what I need to change. And then I will communicate or collaborate with my partner. How can we find an agreement to make this work for both of us?
Well, the good news is you're never going to run out of clients because we have a whole society filled of, I'm triggered, you should not do that. And it's like, well, no, let's discuss this.
Yeah, I could go on a rant. You just got me in a ball rolling down the hill right now with that.
I'm trying to keep it very PC. I don't want to end up going one direction or another. So, but I'm just like thinking about what you said, and I'm just thinking about, like, you know, even the differences in like the different generations and how that aspect is more prominent in some than others. And that's going to hold true with anything because we're all products of what we grew up with, and we all kind of grew up with different environments, you know, what was going on in society at the time. So,
right. And the older generations are always going to criticize the new ones, and the new ones are always going to criticize the old ones. But here's the thing, you'll never get it right because you don't know what you could never possibly know how you need to prepare your child to grow up in their generation because of how things are changing. So we will always be a step behind as far as like helping them understand the new world. However, I think with like our generation growing up, we had very emotionally handicapped parents who were very much in survival mode, unempathetic, unsympathetic, very physically aggressive as a form of discipline. And that was seen as normal, but it's not normal now, and it's actually not good as far as we thought it was. But now I think we're going so far at the other side. It's like a pendulum swing every time that everybody's in a victim mentality now. And you hurt my feelings, and you need to fix this, and you're a narcissist. And not everybody's a narcissist. Sometimes we are being a little sensitive. We need to take a big swallow of pride and figure that sometimes maybe we're the problem.
Yeah. I mean, and this happens, like, you know, in the investing world, as investors, we see it. You don't go back to the median. Like, there's an overcorrection. Like we overcorrect one way. So like you said, there was a style of parenting like that we grew up with that was like hardcore, so to speak. And then it swung all the way opposite direction now, where it's just like, there's zero discipline almost, so to speak. And like you said, everyone's a victim, and it's probably gotten to the point where the pendulum swung enough where we're going to start correcting back the other way. And, you know, maybe we can find a happy medium, but generally it seems like everything runs in cycles, whether it's investments, whether it's markets, whether it's, you know, themes in society. And that's one thing, at least I've noticed, you know, over the last, you know, whatever, 20 years, so to speak, of watching trends in society, watching investments. And obviously it'd be great if we can land in the middle, but it's kind of like porridge, right? We can't seem to, get it just right. It's either too hot or too cold.
Right. The best you can do is just do it for yourself and your own family.
Exactly.
So I'm curious to know what you think about something, Elise, as we begin to evolve, I suppose, because we're going to keep teaching ourselves, like people like you, exist in the world. Alchemist Nation, we're looking to bring people together as we begin to like focus inward and understand that we're the problem and therefore we're also the solution. And we begin to learn like self-regulation and like really become like, I guess, more independent and self-sufficient. I feel personally, this could just be my experience, my perspective, like a lot of relationships, a lot of like these lifelong committed partnerships tend to be more codependent than like two like really like grounded independent beings that are coming together and creating like something. So like I guess my question to you is, what do you see as like the real purpose of a like marriage level type of committed relationship? Like why would two beings like come together on that level?
You should be codependent, actually, in a marriage, but not in an unhealthy way. A mother and her child are codependent, right? So you think about certain relationships, there is a codependency, but everybody thinks codependency is this big negative because the book Codependency No More came out and it's about alcoholism and things like that. Codependency is negative when you're not self-aware, because you are enabling the worst traits of your partner to exist because they are enabling the worst parts of you to exist. A partnership is a partnership, which is kind of like a key. It fits together. This is codependence. You have to codepend on someone. I need you to make this piece work, or I want you to make this piece work. You can be a single person for the rest of your life, but you won't have a family. You just have to make that choice, right? But both of you have to have things to do to make sure that you're still self-sufficient enough so that it doesn't enable the worst traits of each other, to keep each other on your toes, to keep each other reaching for that potential. What happens is usually both people get in their single zone. They go to the gym, they read their books, they're living their best life. They meet someone they really like and they swear they're never going to let go of their independence. And then they are with each other for a few years and they become enmeshed in each other, which means they kind of stop observing themselves, they stop doing self-improvement, and they take on each other's behavior patterns and traits. So then they stop seeing the negatives of those behavior patterns and traits from each other because now they're the same. So codependency isn't like melding into one person. It's the ignorance of the traits that are now impacting the relationship in a negative way. Unhealthy codependence is that. So if you can remain in your independence while being together and loving each other in the same way, then you can understand what is healthily depending on someone. Like just for example, old marriages, right? The man works, the woman stays at home and takes care of the kids. That's a codependency. She is depending on him to make the money, right? He is depending on her to take care of the household, to take care of the children. A lot of those marriages didn't work, but a lot of them have. They're very happy. They have a healthy codependence. They know their roles. You have to know your role in the partnership, because if everybody is just doing their own thing completely separate, then what is the point? It's not a partnership. It's just it's just being roommates with someone.
So good that you just pointed out that, the good part, because like you said, we get these like words because of whatever it is, a book, just a popular theme will get a negative connotation. It's like people have codependency and they just think bad. And it's like, well, no, there's healthy codependency and then there's unhealthy. And I think that holds true in a lot of things. Like there's not a lot in the world, at least in my opinion, that, is 100% bad or 100% good. Like there's pros and cons to just about everything.
Right.
So I think it's, about focusing on the healthy side of it.
Right. Are we all just speechless after this?
I'm looking at Andrew's
rampage.
face and I just see like the wheels turning and he looked like he had something he wanted to ask. And I was kind of like I was waiting in suspense.
I feel like I just confused him because of
I don't even know. I think you broke him. I think you broke him.
Interdependence and codependence is bad and don't rely on anybody and do your own thing.
Okay. No, fine. Okay, fine. So codependence is good.
Healthy codependent.
It can be good, yeah.
Healthily, you can merge with somebody like in that sort of way and rely on each other. I suppose there has to be some level of expectation. I guess I fear putting expectation on anybody.
Yeah, because you have a wound with trust.
Perhaps maybe that's what
because if you don't understand what healthy trust looks like, because maybe you didn't have people support your emotional needs as a child or support your goals or whatever, which often men do feel rejected and emotionally abandoned a lot, you don't know how to trust, and you don't believe that that level of trust exists or should exist. You reject it because you felt rejected by it. But there's plenty of examples we have where people definitely do have expectations and rely on people and their needs are met, right? There are some children out there who have perfectly healthy parents who actually meet their needs and aren't dysfunctional. I grew up in a dysfunctional family, God bless my family. I love them, but very dysfunctional. And they didn't know how dysfunctional it was, right? Because you just grow up how it is, but it leaves us with these wounds. So don't reject your ability to have something because you may. This is not targeting you, but now I'm just going off on a rant. No, for anybody who feels resistance towards this, it is possible. It is possible, Mr. Brown.
It's interesting because I feel like going back to earlier when we talked about like the successful person of like going and like on the journey of discovering what you want and your purpose and passion. I feel like that to me made the whole concept of that level of a committed relationship seem a lot harder to attain, because maybe on some level, now that I've really defined what I want to do here and and have sort of a plan, it's created more definition on what that could look like. But on some level, that also made it seem more attainable, because now it's like there's so many criteria. Like, how is it that I could possibly fit another person on this level? Like, they would have to like so effortlessly mesh into like what it is I already want to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't otherwise focus attention on it. It's interesting. Because again, what's the purpose? Is it just for the relationship itself? Is it for the love? Like to have I don't know. It's interesting. Like, what's the purpose of, because before it used to be for like empire building. If we're going way back, like you'd get married to like merge families, right? To like grow. I don't know. It's interesting.
And they had an expectation, right? I need to marry my cousin to keep the bloodline going. Oh, yeah, the expectation is we have a son, right? Like the expectation, there's a lot of expectations with that. You have to do X, Y, Z. That's an unhealthy thing, right? Because you're forcing people to go against their authenticity or the true wants, needs, and desires. And maybe it's not so much expectations as much as it is having standards. And you know what? No, yeah, I would say expectations, because expectations are what hold people accountable. If you let your expectations become lackadaisical, you will overstep your own desires and you'll become like subconsciously resentful. You won't state your needs and things just get all messy. You get grumpy. No one likes it.
I mean, I feel like
Mike's having a moment. Mitch is having a moment on this call. Sorry.
No, I am. And it's product of like I went to an event like a year ago from I forgot her full name. She just goes by Dr. J, woman in her 80s, very, very insightful. And she talked about like what is it, the psychodynamics and stuff like that. But she spoke about expectations, and it was funny because what I got out of that event was that, like, yeah, obviously you should have some expectations, but expectations will also, she framed them somewhat negatively in terms of like, a lot of disappointment in relationships is because of expectations. But I think it was more so like unwarranted expectations. Like you have this expectation that you're putting on your partner that they didn't agree to, or they're not down with. Right. And I think a lot of it happens especially when you first get together with somebody, because you're getting to know them. So like you're only getting a sample. So like you might see something where you're like, oh, well, it looks like they're kind of like X. So then it's like you're like, I like that. And you expect it. And then as you get to know them more, you're like, oh, that's not actually a regular part of their life. Well, that's kind of disappointing. And I kind of want it to be a regular part of their life. And then you start like pushing that thing. And then it starts becoming like an issue between the two people.
Somebody is presenting something to you and it's not their natural behavior, it's not unreasonable for you to expect that thing because that's what they said. So first of all, that example wasn't your fault. But yes, what you were saying before that is our fault when we're like having these subconscious agreements that we're not letting them know and they've never demonstrated. And we're just kind of, I'm going to do something for them in hopes that they're going to do XYZ for me. And then they never do it. And now I'm like resentful of them. But they're like, you literally never asked me that, or you never alluded to that, or you couldn't tell me what you needed. And that's what a lot of men struggle with, actually, like the nice guy syndrome.
Mm.
Have you heard of this?
I was that. Like, that was me in my 20s. I was the epitome.
Well, you do a lot of nice things and you're confused as to like why someone is not reciprocating or not, you're not getting your needs met or fulfilled, but you wouldn't even know what your needs were. Like you wouldn't even know what to ask for they should just do XYZ. And they're like, well, what does that mean? Right. So we have to know ourselves so we can know how to clearly communicate expectations, needs, wants, desires. And so we don't have hidden contracts. So I love that.
Absolutely. And like you said, like you got to know yourself. And the problem is a lot of people, they don't know who they are immediately in life. It's not like you turn 21 and like, I know exactly who I am and what I need. Maybe some people do. Like I always say I was a late bloomer. Like I didn't get this figured out until like my mid 30s. And this, and from what I see, like, there's women I'm friends with that tell me like most men don't get it figured out until they're like 50. And I was like, I don't disagree with that, because even though I like feel like I figured it out in my 30s, like I know more now than I did, then. And it's just like, and I figure that when I am 50, I'm going to probably even be more self-aware and more comfortable in my own skin and all those things. So it's a lifelong journey, at least for me. Man, Andrew, I feel like we could keep rolling and rolling, and this could turn into a Tim Ferriss type podcast where we're like 2 hours in. But I want to be respectful of Elise's time, and we should probably put a bow on it. As much as I'd love to keep going, and really, the good news is, as much as we're enjoying this, and I'm sure our audience is, you can get more of it because Elise will be speaking at the 2023 100 Millionaire Summit. That is the first weekend in November. So get there if you want to hear more. Can you give us just a topic or a bullet point or whatever it is, you're going to be talking about on stage in November?
Basically, everything that we just talked about, I am going to give you the action plan on how you can start finding all of those answers.
That is honestly the best type of presentations and conferences where you get actionable information that you can do something with when you leave. So I'm happy to hear that. And I think
we're going to be doing it right there. So people should do their best they can to come to the actual summit, because it's not a take home. It's a like in-house actionable. Just want to emphasize that for anybody who's listening. Come to the summit so that you can be there and experience it in person.
Yes. Start FOMOing now.
Yes.
Awesome. And outside of the summit, if people want to get in touch with you and consume your content, what is the best way to go about doing that?
I'm on all social medias at Elise Micheals, Micheals, Mike Heels. It's Michaels spelled in a weird way. And FYI, there's a lot of spam accounts out there. So if I DM you asking for a donation for a reading, it's not me.
That's how you know you've made it, when there is spam accounts out there.
Those African princes, don't let them get you.
Right? It's like, Elise did not move to Nigeria.
I know. Yeah. I didn't send you a PayPal with the name Mary J 8799.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's kind of entertaining that scam is still going. Because, I mean, I remember making this joke like in high school about like the Nigerian prince. And I'm like, and they're still doing it. And it must still be profitable enough. Otherwise, they wouldn't still be doing it.
They do it in a different way, man. They adapt. No one's a better salesperson than those scammers. Like, I want to like hire them for my team. Like, I don't know how they do it, dude. They must like set up an AI chatbot to like go after people's accounts, and they follow all my followers and ask them for money. I'm like, damn, dude, I should be doing this. They're probably making more money than I am just getting donations off these people. Sorry, any of my followers who've like been scammed. First of all, why didn't you give me money? Second of all, come on now. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for all that. I'm not just out here holding the hat out asking for shekels. You know what I'm saying?
Sad but true. Sad but true. Well, this has been awesome. I appreciate the time, and look forward to hearing more and getting to experience these actionable items at the summit. I certainly will make sure I sit down in the room during this session. And anyone that's FOMOing, you know where to be and where it is. Orlando, first weekend in November. So, Andrew, what's the link again?
100mmsummit.com.
Doesn't get easier than that. Awesome. Elise, thanks again so much for being a part of the show. And everyone, hope you enjoyed the episode, and we will see you on the next one.